Bill Maher thinks WNBA rookie and #1 draft pick Caitlin Clark is being targeted by other players because she's not a lesbian and she's white.
The true reason for Clark's contract in Europe was just revealed by Bill Maher, and it confirms our suspicions. Since Clark doesn't belong in their small group, they naturally made her life miserable. I mean, Clark is black and 85% of the league is lesbian. Yes, she doesn't precisely fit those descriptions.
The league is very lesbian, and she's not. And there's race. There's a lot of going on here.
But instead of respecting her talent, they treat her like she's just there to generate cash for them. Like, really? Sorry, WNBA, but maybe if you focused on your actual product instead of some social agenda, you wouldn't be losing stars like Clark. Now, everyone's crying because she's off to Europe where she'll be appreciated and Clark doesn't owe them a thing. So Bill Maher didn't just casually drop a bombshell about Caitlin Clark's contract. He made it crystal clear. Caitlin's real struggle wasn't on the court. It was surviving in a league that didn't want her there. And no, Caitlin didn't pack her bags and head to Europe because of some minor contract issue or a shiny new deal. Let's be real, this wasn't about cash or convenience. She left because she had to. She was in survival mode. Maher blew the lid off, exposing the absolute mess going on behind the scenes in the WNBA. Players, league officials, all seemed more focused on making sure Caitlin felt out of place. It didn't matter that she was the best thing to happen to the WNBA in years. Nope. What mattered was that she didn't fit into the political storyline they were trying to sell. I think it's natural for a megastar to come in and people say, I'm kind of tired of hearing about it. It's everything. It's women are catty. The league is very lesbian, and she's not. And there's race. There's a lot of going on here. The storyline, Caitlin didn't fit their so-called ideal mold. She's white, she's straight, and apparently in the WNBA, that's enough to paint a massive target on your back. The league that's always yelling about how inclusive they are. Yeah, it turns out they couldn't handle the fact that one of their biggest stars didn't check off the boxes they were so busy promoting. Instead of celebrating her record-breaking talent, they seemed more interested in hiding her away. Almost like they were embarrassed that she was the one dominating headlines and driving up ticket sales. And Maher, oh, he didn't hold back. There's also a racial element to this. We can't deny that. Maher, being Maher, was quick to call out the WNBA's stunning hypocrisy. The same league that's always screaming about equality and fairness. Yeah, they were the ones turning their backs on their biggest star because she didn't fit the right image. And Caitlin? Well, she was treated like an outsider from day one. Snide comments, shady vibes from other players. It was like high school drama, but with worse sneakers. Instead of throwing her a parade for basically saving the league, they acted like she was an inconvenience. And let's not even talk about how ugly it got. I mean, that was pretty deliberate. And look at the other girl on her team coming over. See, if this was men, they'd defend each other on their same team. I mean, men will fight from two teams, but when somebody checks who's on your team, you defend that guy. Angel Reese's head slap moment didn't just get people talking because of what she did. Oh no, it was the whole vibe behind it that made everyone stop and say, did she really just do that? During the 2024 regular season, when Reese squared up against Caitlin Clark, she slammed Caitlin in the head. This wasn't just your run-of-the-mill trash talk. It felt personal, like Reese was putting a stamp on it. Some fans even went as far as calling it Reese has always been that fiery competitive player who loves to stir the pot. But this was something else. It wasn't just trash talk anymore. It was the kind of shade that gets under your skin, makes headlines, and leaves everyone wondering what exactly was going through her head. I just can't. Angel Reese is a hater. And her whole media popularity, her whole platform is built off the back of Caitlin Clark. And then, to make things even more interesting, Dejonie Carrington decided to throw herself into the mix as if the drama level wasn't already through the roof. During the first game of the 2024 WNBA playoffs between the Indiana Fever and the Connecticut Sun, Carrington went for the eye poke, a classic move straight out of a Three Stooges skit. Only this time, Clark wasn't laughing. She ended up with a bruised eye and a whole lot of questions. Timing couldn't have been worse either. Clark was already having a nightmare game, shooting a horrendous 4 of 17 from the field, and then Carrington gave her an eye poke for good measure. Of course, Carrington was quick to brush it off like it was a total accident, but let's just say the fans weren't exactly buying that excuse. I mean, eye poke during a playoff game, people were side-eyeing that whole situation harder than Clark herself after the incident. And of course, Carrington and Clark both denied anything malicious was going on, but you could practically hear the eye rolls from everyone watching. Dejanay Carrington stabbed Caitlin Clark with her fingernails right in the eye. And don't even get me started on the referees. Bill Maher made sure everyone knew what fans had been grumbling about all season long. Caitlin Clark was getting absolutely hosed by the officiating. There were more phantom fouls called on her than you'd see in a bad ghost movie. Some of these calls were so bizarre, even the commentators who usually dance around controversial stuff were raising their eyebrows and actually questioning what the refs were doing. It wasn't just the fans losing it over these calls. Analysts were starting to point out that Clark was getting fouled out left and right, while her opponents seemed to have some kind of immunity card. And the WNBA wasn't just standing by and letting it happen. They were part of the problem. Honestly, it's been a lot of nonsense. I think in my 11-year career, I've never experienced the racial comments from the Indiana Fever fan base, where we had her face on a serious matter that happened in this world. And it's unacceptable, honestly. And yeah, there's no place for it, and we've been professional throughout the whole entire thing. But I've never been called the things that I've been called on social media. And there's no place for it. The whole racial controversy swirling around Caitlin Clark and her fan base has been the drama that just won't quit. And trust me, it's not just the fans keeping this fire burning. WNBA players like Angel Reese and Alyssa Thomas have been throwing gasoline on it too. Reese, who's had beef with Clark ever since their college days, was more than vocal about it. She took to social media and even her podcast, Unapologetically Angel, to air it all out. She's mentioned that she's been bombarded with racist comments and threats, many of which, according to her, came from Clark's fans. Those guys, they're the racists, when really, why all are the racists? The people coming up with excuses to hate Caitlin Clark and the new fan base that she brought. She didn't hold back on calling them out either. And just when you thought it couldn't get more intense, here comes Alyssa Thomas, tossing her hat into the ring too. Thomas wasn't shy about speaking up after the 2024 playoff series, where her Connecticut son faced Clark's Indiana Fever. She claimed that she experienced more racism in that one season than in her entire 11-year career. So yeah, the pot wasn't just stirred, it was boiled over. But no one believed her because it's loved because she's positive. One of the reasons Caitlin Clark is so beloved is that she had a good attitude about it and said it's something to work toward. And that's why people like her. She seems to have this positive attitude. She's an appealing player to follow and to watch. She is this popular. I mean, she is tremendously talented. She was the #1 draft pick for a reason. Thomas went so far as to say that the playoff series against Clark's team was a racial battleground for her, which sparked the WNBA to issue a statement condemning racism from fans. But honestly, the damage was done. The public's already emotional response was fueled even further. And guess who was caught right in the middle of it all? Yep, Caitlin Clark. She had become the face of the league thanks to her rookie season, breaking records and blowing minds. But now her supporters were being labeled as racists. Oh, her fan base is hating. It's the wrong type of fans. They tweet mean things to Alyssa Thomas. This stuff is a joke. Things got so out of hand that even Clark herself had to address it. After her team got bounced from the playoffs, she had to step up during a press conference and try to clean up the mess. She made it clear that these hateful comments weren't coming from her real fans. She called them trolls, trying to steer the conversation back to the positives, the actual game, the league, and the fans who weren't busy stirring up hate. But the social media beast had already latched onto the narrative, and it wasn't about to let go. The damage was done, and no matter what Clark said, she and her fan base were already being painted with a broad, ugly brush. Even Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, who's a former Rice University basketball player, weighed on this. I think it's really crazy. I mean, at the end of the day, nobody can deny the fact that she has completely transformed fans' interest and enthusiasm for women's basketball. Now, of course, Bill Maher wasn't about to sit on the sidelines and stay quiet about this. No, he jumped right into the conversation, pointing out how these racial allegations had essentially poisoned the well for Clark. Being linked to a racist fan base wasn't just some online gossip. It became her reality, affecting her relationships in the locker room, on the court, and probably even at the local grocery store. Maher was quick to expose the fact that Reese and Thomas, two major players themselves, had essentially turned what should have been a classic sports rivalry into something way messier, an all-out racial and political battleground. Maher didn't tiptoe around it either. He flat out called the accusations flimsy at best, yet those baseless claims still somehow managed to get woven into the very fabric of the WNBA's inner workings. And really, can you blame her? When Europe came knocking with an offer that didn't come with a side of controversy, it must have felt like a no-brainer. They valued her for her basketball skills, not for how she fit into some social media narrative. This wasn't just about finding a new team or a new paycheck. For Clark, this was about sanity. The WNBA had gone so far off the rails that it was hard to even recognize the game anymore. The league that should have been all about celebrating the sport had gotten tangled up in issues that had absolutely nothing to do with basketball. And for Clark, it was just too much. With the WNBA season ending for many teams, there are already so many players heading overseas to play during the offseason. But with all of the drama currently surrounding the WNBA, on top of the low-paying salaries, some of these players are questioning if they'll even return. Maher's take on the whole thing. He couldn't have been clearer. This wasn't just a Caitlin Clark problem. It was a WNBA problem. The league, which should have been rolling out the red carpet for one of its biggest stars, instead let toxic narratives take over. The racial allegations, the finger-pointing, the absolute chaos, it all got in the way of what should have been a success story for both Clark and the league. And that's why, in the end, Clark had no choice but to leave. Europe gave her what the WNBA couldn't, a chance to just play the game without all the extra baggage.